How's it going, YouTube? My name is Andreas, and in this video I'm gonna talk about Chinese poker apps, what they're all about and how they work, and then also what today's ban in China means for the poker industry. And if you want to know more about that, stay tuned. Poker apps have been around for quite a while now, and a lot of the high stakes poker scene has moved from PokerStars and these mainstream sites over to app-based poker, where people play against each other for virtual currency and also for very high stakes. So the way that it usually works is that you have an agent in China that sets up a couple of accounts for you, and you basically send that person money so that you get virtual currency on those apps, and you basically get a couple of accounts for that. On these accounts, you're then invited to so-called clubs, where you're playing against mostly Asian players, and you're trying to basically battle it out for that virtual currency and turn some profit. So when you want to cash out your winnings, you basically pay between 5 and 6%, and then it goes partially to the agent and to the poker apps. Next to being able to win potentially much more money playing on these apps, there's also a couple of risk factors involved. First things first, you want to be able to trust your agent, or at least make sure that he has a history of paying out other players that are also in the same network that you know about. The second factor is collusion. In the games that I was playing, there's actually quite some risk, especially in Pot Limit Omaha, that my opponents were sharing hole cards with each other and that the app side wasn't doing much against it. So the way to avoid it is basically playing heads-up tables and not 6-max tables, so that you don't get screwed by the other players sharing hole card information. Today, PokerNews.com came public with the new information that these China apps will be no longer tolerated from June 1st. What does that mean for poker? Some players have called this the Chinese Black Friday, and there's a reason for this. Some of these games have been quite juicy if you've been in the right clubs, and a lot of the pro players have made a lot of money on these sites over the last 2 years or so. So in the second part of the video, I will talk about where money is lost in poker. As you've just seen, I added it back here, and I will start with the rake. Rake, or the commission, what each side takes, is where the most money is lost in poker. It's quite natural that they definitely need to turn a profit, and there's not just bad things coming from it. Obviously, they also need to pay their employees, and people can make a living working for those poker sites. However, with some of the recent changes on sites, for example PokerStars, you can check down the link in the description, where they increased rake on the smallest stakes by quite a bit and basically are hurting the recreational players the most. It can get too much. And that's why also I pictured it back here, that the rake is the biggest chunk that's gonna cause the poker economy to lose a lot of money, and then potentially it shrinking over the next few years. So a second area where money is lost in poker is basically to winning players. Whether they are professional players or recreational players doesn't really matter. In the end, these winning players are also necessary for the game, because imagine poker being promoted as a game where nobody's winning. It wouldn't be the same game anymore. It would be only a game of chance, just gambling, and it wouldn't be a strategic game partially anymore. So these winning players are really necessary, and even some players are hating it. That really needs to stop. It's really not helping the game to grow if you want nobody to win in the end. It's really necessary that some people are going to win, and I think some of the poker sites have really lost track of that goal, that they will let at least some players win, and they try to basically almost get rid of the winning players so they can rake everyone and make the maximum profit of these sites. And you can really tell that which sites are not trying to go fully into that direction and let professional poker players or poker players that just want to win still be on the side with what they're doing. And last but not least, where a lot of money also gets drained, is by governments taxing the game. And I think this is really the most brutal form of money being drained out of the circle, because when you think about it, the first thing is that when poker sites rake you, they're also going to reinvest some of the money in order to try to attract new clients to the game, making the poker environment bigger. When the winning players win, then there's the story that you know, players can win at the game and the strategy aspect of the game gets promoted. But when governments tax poker, and especially here the stress is on taxing too much. I have no problem with like taxing on a small amount, but when, for example, the US or the WSOP main event gets taxed for like 30% of the entire volume to some players, it just gets plain ridiculous. That money just goes nowhere, that goes directly out of the poker economy and hurts the game more than anything else because of just the sheer amount that gets drained out of the economy. Sure, I'm not saying that poker taxes are all bad, but just for the poker economy, there's nothing good coming from it. Of course, for the state in the end, there's a lot of good. And here, really what I'm talking about is it can get too much. If it's just a little bit, it's not a big deal. And then, you know, everyone's happy. But when it gets just so much like in the US sometimes, I really have a big problem because I see the big picture and how the poker economy gets affected. And this is already the reason why I think that Chinese ban on app-based poker is so terrible, because in the end, you know, there's nothing good coming from it on this ban, on those government measures. It's not really about tax here, but you know, there's not really an upside to it, where, you know, whereas winning players and even Rake from sites, you know, can be reinvested and they can have at least some good for poker long term, as it is attracting more players in the future. Last but not least, I've linked all the resources that I've used for this video in the description below. You can read it there if you want to know more about app-based poker. Also, don't forget to leave a comment if you wanted to know more. I will be checking all your comments and reply to them in the description below. Just make sure you use that if you want to learn more about it. Also, would be thankful to you guys liking this video and then also subscribing to the channel if you enjoy my content. And depending on how you guys react on these videos, I'm going to produce more videos in this area of the game, because I think it's really relevant to also talk about the poker industry as a whole and not just go into strategy, because, you know, understanding the poker industry and, you know, really game selecting well and looking where poker is going might be important to you guys, and that's why I'm making this video. Thanks for watching today and see you for the next one.